I've been cheating on you for 50 years, and you, just for convenience, the husband said at his wife's birthday party in front of all the guests. And after that, she did something shocking. Dear friends, before we continue, write if you've heard similar stories in your circle. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And now we begin. Enjoy listening. Dolores woke up, as always, without an alarm, exactly at 6 a.m. Even on the day of her 68th birthday, her body did not allow herself an extra half hour under the warm blanket. A habit formed over half a century of married life proved to be strong. It's already October, the 27th, she whispered, glancing at the tear-off calendar pages. A lamp under the fringed lampshade lit up in the kitchen, the very one they bought back in the 80s. Dolores took smoked ribs out of the fridge. She had gone to the market to the butcher's just yesterday, picking the very best. She cooked the soup by the recipe of her late mother-in-law only on big holidays, with white beans soaked overnight, with carrot grated on a coarse grater, with cabbage cut into thin strips. After half an hour, the kitchen was filled with a delicious, teasing aroma. Dolores stirred the soup with a wooden spoon and quietly hummed a Moldovan song she used to sing as a girl when helping her mother with the household. Happy birthday, my dear. Marcus came out of the bedroom in sweatpants and a tank top, kissed his wife on the cheek. The kiss was habitual, routine, like every morning for 50 years now. Dolores turned around, expecting to see at least a small bouquet of asters or chrysanthemums from the stall near the bus stop in her husband's hands. But Marcus's hands were empty. Strange, she thought, continuing to stir the soup. Usually he gives me a little bouquet in the morning. Well, maybe he prepared something special for the evening, when the whole family gathers. Back then, she didn't yet suspect what awaited her in reality. Suddenly, a distant evening surfaced in her memory, spring of '75, the House of Culture in the regional center, where she came with her girlfriends from the village to dance. The stifling heat from many bodies, the creak of the floorboards underfoot, the accordion playing songs. And she stood by the wall in a new chintz dress she had sewn herself from a pattern in the magazine Rabotnitsa. Miss, shall we dance? A tall guy with a mustache approached her, although there were prettier girls nearby. Marcus was then stately, broad-shouldered, in a white short-sleeved shirt. A driver at the bus depot, a desirable groom. He spoke with city slang, knew how to court beautifully, gave perfume, took her to the cinema. A year later, a wedding in the village club, guests at long tables, Uncle Rick playing the trumpet until dawn. And then, moving to the city, to a room in a dormitory. She left her parental home with white walls and blue shutters, a vineyard planted by her grandfather, and a well with icy water. The smell of jasmine in the yard. Dolores, what are you thinking about? Marcus took her hand. Today is your day. We need to get ready for the celebration. Their two-room apartment on the second floor looked like a museum of everyday life. An 80s furniture wall with crystal dishes behind glass. A carpet on the wall with noble deer. Photographs in wooden frames on the sideboard, the wedding, the birth of their daughter Alice, her school years, university, her own wedding, grandchildren. On the kitchen windowsill stood rows of jars with compotes and pickles, plum, apple, tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini, caviar. Every autumn Dolores canned preserves according to her grandmother's recipes, which she remembered by heart. Marcus always praised. You can't buy anything like this in any store. Today he was especially caring, helped arrange chairs around the extendable table, washed the dishes after breakfast, even asked if he needed to go to the store, maybe something was needed for the table. Imagine, Dolores told her neighbor Mindy while she helped set the table, 50 years married, and he's still just as caring. Not like others. They drink, they beat, John, But mine never even raised his voice, Dolores said. Mindy mumbled something in response and turned to the window. Dolores didn't notice the strange expression on her friend's face. By lunchtime, Dolores changed into a new dress the color of ripe cherries, which she had specially bought in a fancy store in the plus-size section. The fabric was good, wrinkle-free, and the cut hid her plump figure while emphasizing the still beautiful line of her shoulders. "Marcus, how do I look?" She twirled in front of the mirror in the hallway. "My beauty, better than anyone," her husband replied from the room. But something was wrong. Her hands trembled as she set the plates, as if a premonition of trouble stirred in her chest. During the day, Dolores caught her husband's glance several times, excited, nervous, as if he was preparing to jump from a height. He smiled mysteriously at times, then suddenly looked away when she caught his gaze. In his hands, he fiddled with something, sometimes a newspaper, sometimes matches. Maybe he's preparing a surprise? Dolores thought as she laid out the aspic made from pike perch onto the plates. Or maybe he bought a special gift. He promised me a ring with a little stone a long time ago. By 3:30, Marcus came out of the bedroom carrying a bouquet of yellow asters. Lush, beautiful, clearly expensive. But instead of ceremoniously giving it to his wife, he simply placed the flowers in a crystal vase in the middle of the table. "For decoration," he said, adjusting the petals. "Marcus," Dolores looked at her husband, confused. "You forgot to give me flowers." "Later, Dolores, later," he waved her off, and there was a tone in his voice she had never heard before. "First, I have to tell you something. Very soon." Something went cold inside Dolores' stomach. She looked at the festive table, at the asters in the vase, at her husband who was averting his eyes, and suddenly understood this birthday would be special. Only what kind, she did not yet know. By 4 o'clock, the apartment was filled with voices and laughter. First to arrive were their daughter Alice with her husband Leon and children, 16-year-old Alex and 14-year-old Viola. Then the neighbors showed up, Mindy with her husband Rick, Marcus with his wife Beatrice from the next building entrance. Lastly came Marcus's colleagues, retired drivers Felix and Henry, with whom he had once traveled all over the country. The table was overflowing with treats. Dolores had spent 3 days preparing Olivier salad with boiled sausage and homemade pickles, herring under a fur coat, layered properly, pike perch aspic with carrot flowers, homemade cabbage pies, following her late mother-in-law's recipe. "Mom, maybe we should order sushi?" Alice suggested, eyeing the table. "Or some rolls? The kids love those." "What kind of food is that?" Dolores waved her hand dismissively. "Rice and raw fish. I made proper, real food." Viola snorted but stayed silent. Alex was already piling himself a full plate of Olivier. Marcus was in high spirits. He poured everyone a shot, vodka for the men, wine for the women, compote for the kids. "To the health of our dear birthday girl, to my Dolores, who has made this house cozy for half a century." "To family," Leon chimed in. "To Grandma," Viola shouted loudly. They drank and ate. Marcus relaxed and started telling stories about long-haul trips, how they got stuck in snow, how truckers helped each other out, how local girls in the mountains treated them to cod pies. The guests laughed. The atmosphere was warm, familial, just as a birthday should be. After the second shot, Felix started a conversation about today's generation of drivers. "There's none of that brotherly mutual help in them that we had. We live by the motto, one for all for one." "You're right," Marcus agreed, pouring the third. Everything was honest, manly back then. After the third shot, something in him shifted. He stood up, swaying slightly, took a glass in his hands and tapped a spoon to get everyone's attention. "Dear guests." Marcus's voice grew louder than usual, with a drunken strain. "I want to confess something to you." Dolores looked up at her husband. Something bad stirred in her chest. "And Dolores too," Marcus continued, looking somewhere above the guests' heads. "I've wanted to say this for a long time. But I waited. I waited a whole 50 years. A long pause. The room went quiet. Only the ticking clock on the wall was heard. "I've been cheating on my Dolores all these 50 years, he blurted out in one breath. "She was just convenient for me. Cooked, washed, kept the house. Sorry, Dolores." At first, there was awkward laughter. The guests thought he was making a bad joke. Alice froze, fork halfway to her mouth. "Dad, what are you talking about?" But Marcus didn't stop. The alcohol loosened his tongue. "Why so quiet? I'm a real man. I needed variety. Not the same woman. 50 years. Dolores sat frozen, as if turned into a pillar of salt. A frozen smile stuck to her face. Her hands absent-mindedly crumbled bread. The world outside the window became unreal. Voices sounded as if underwater. The guests' faces blurred. A ringing filled her ears, as if lightning had struck her head. "Grandpa, are you crazy?" Alex looked at his grandfather in horror. "What's so wrong?" Marcus snapped back. "It's a man's business. You think I'm the only one? All men live like that, they just don't admit it." "Grandpa, is it true?" Alex looked at him with a grown-up disappointment. "Did you never love Grandma?" I loved her," Marcus waved it off. "But love and this are two different things. Men will understand. I won't understand." The teenager blurted out. "That's cruel." The guests started to hurry and gather their things. Felix mumbled something about urgent matters. Beatrice said the usual phrases about the delicious table and thanked for the invitation. After 15 minutes, only the family remained in the apartment. Alice rushed to her father. "What are you doing? What the hell did you just say?" "I'm telling the truth." Marcus waved his hand. "I'm tired of keeping everything inside." "Oh, the first floor was something else. Julia from the store, just a delight. What's more, I've had girls in every city." He couldn't stop anymore. The words poured out like a stream. "So I regret nothing. Tell your mother not to be upset. Let her understand the nature of men." Dolores quietly got up from the table and went to the kitchen. She sat down on the floor near the stove, leaning her back against the kitchen cabinet, the very one they chose together 20 years ago. She looked at the familiar doors, at the handles polished shiny by her hands. "What is this?" she whispered. "What is this?" Alice found her mother on the kitchen floor, hugged her shoulders. "Mom, he's drunk. Don't listen to him. Tomorrow he'll sober up and take it all back." But Dolores was silent. She stared at one spot with unblinking eyes. There were no tears, only the confusion of a person who suddenly realized that half a century of life had been a lie. From the other room, Marcus's voice still echoed, explaining to his son-in-law and grandchildren the basics of male psychology. Viola was crying. Alex was quietly swearing. Leona was trying to take the family home. The celebration was over. The night dragged on endlessly, like a line in a bad song. Dolores lay on her back, counting the cracks on the ceiling. There were 7. She had remembered them since her youth. Next to her, Marcus was snoring, sleeping deeply, sprawled across the whole bed, like a man who had lifted a heavy burden from his soul. And in her head, his words spun like a dull needle on an old record. For convenience, the same woman. 50 years. Outside the window the hour struck. Then 2. Then 3. Somewhere a dog barked, a car passed by. And she kept lying there, staring into the darkness, feeling something inside slowly harden, turning into a cold, heavy lump. By morning her eyes were completely dry. There were no more tears. Marcus got up at 6:30, as usual. Stretched, yawned. "Dolores, where are my gray socks?" "The ones you washed yesterday." She pointed at the dresser. Couldn't say another word. "Will you make coffee?" he asked, pulling on his socks. "Yes," she replied dully. Marcus looked at his wife, pale, with red eyes, and shrugged. As if nothing special had happened yesterday. As if he hadn't shattered her world to pieces. After he left, Dolores sat in the kitchen with a cup of cold tea. Her hands trembled so much that the porcelain jingled against the saucer. There was a knock at the door around 11. Mindy stood on the doorstep with a cake in a box. "Sorry about yesterday. I brought you a cake. Bought it at the store." They sat at the kitchen table. Dolores absently brewed tea, took out the sugar bowl with cube sugar, the kind she bought out of habit. Marcus liked his tea with cubes, not granulated sugar. Mindy fidgeted, twisted a spoon in her hands, then suddenly decided. "Dolores, I need to tell you something." "Speak." Dolores looked out the window, where yellow maple leaves were slowly swirling. "We all knew," Mindy exhaled. "God, it's so hard for me to say this. But now there's no point in keeping silent." And she told. She told what had been hidden for years by everyone, neighbors, acquaintances, co-workers. What people whispered secretly on the stair landing. How they averted their eyes when Dolores greeted them. How they fell silent if she appeared in the store, suddenly remembering she was there, the one who knew nothing. "We saw everything, Dolores," Mindy said softly, guilty. How he went up to Melissa every Thursday. Brought bouquets, boxes of chocolates. And he told you he went to Felix's garage. Remember, you were even happy? It's good that men have such strong friendships. She paused for a second. Then continued. Divorce used to be almost a sentence, especially for a woman. The neighbors would whisper, "What did she lose her husband for?" She didn't watch him closely enough. Even if the husband was at fault, the wife was the one blamed. That's why everyone kept quiet. The family was supposed to be unbreakable, no matter what happened behind closed doors. It turned out Melissa from apartment 12 met with him every Thursday. Melissa's husband would go to his mother in the countryside, and the house was empty. The affair lasted 15 years. "I thought Melissa was shy," Dolores whispered. But she avoided eye contact. "And Nancy, the cashier from Magnolia," Mindy continued. Young, curly-haired. Marcus courted her right in the store, in front of everyone. Flowers, chocolates, he said they were for his granddaughter. And the cashiers whispered among themselves, "Look, Grandpa has fallen in love." And at work, her voice grew quieter. At the bus depot, he bragged to the guys, "My wife is a country fool, she understands nothing. I can bring girls home from morning till night, she won't notice." On long-distance trips, he had girls all over the country. Colleagues told their wives about this. And those wives kept silent. To avoid breaking up someone else's family. Dolores whispered. And suddenly her memory started working with ruthless clarity. The mosaic began to take shape. Strange hairs on the collar of his jacket, from female passengers, catching on the bus. Late calls, dispatcher, urgent trip. His refusal of intimacy in recent years. I'm tired, Dolores, age is not what it used to be. Strange purchases. Expensive perfumes he gave her 4 holidays, then Dolores found empty bottles among his things. Even gifts, my God. Even the gifts were not for her. He bought them for mistresses, and when the affair ended, he brought them home as gifts for his wife. We thought you knew, but tolerated it, Mindy excused herself. We didn't want to break up the family. The kids were small then. And then we got used to silence. In our generation, the family is above everything. Divorce was a shame. So it turns out I was the only fool, Dolores' voice trembled. And everyone laughed behind my back. No, Dolores. No one laughed. Everyone felt sorry for you. And then it overwhelmed her. Not grief. Something worse. Nausea rose to her throat. Her temples throbbed. Her hands trembled, the cup clinked against the saucer. It felt as if the floor was slipping away beneath her feet and the walls began to slowly spin. Mindy rushed to the sink for water. Dolores sat and thought. 50 years, she had been a laughingstock to the whole building. A pitiful, deceived wife who saw nothing. Understood nothing. And everyone knew. Everyone except her. And then Dolores cried. Not sobbing, not gasping, she cried quietly, silently, like old women do when they realize the pain will never fully pass. Tears rolled down her cheeks and dripped into the cup of cold tea. 50 years, she whispered. 50 years I lived with a stranger, thinking he was my own. The key turned in the lock. Marcus came home earlier than usual, saw Mindy's tearful wife with a guilty face in the kitchen, and immediately understood everything. So what? He asked aggressively, throwing his jacket on the chair. All men live like this. At least I'm honest, I don't hide it anymore. And you, Dolores, what did you think? That I'm a saint? Mindy stood up. Marcus, how can you not be ashamed? What should I be ashamed of? He snapped. I'm a man, I have needs. Not turned into an old wreck like some people. He looked at his wife with a kind of cruel triumph. And anyway, Dolores, if you were more interesting, I wouldn't have looked elsewhere. It's your own fault. Dolores raised her eyes to him. Such eyes that he involuntarily stepped back. There was no pain or resentment in them. There was determination. That's how I am. And now I know what you are. The week passed like a fog. Dolores visibly lost weight. The cherry-red dress now hung like a sack, and her face had taken on a waxy pallor. She slept in fits, waking up from nightmares where Marcus laughed at her with unfamiliar women. She couldn't eat, everything got stuck in her throat like a lump. Mom, stop torturing yourself. Alice burst into the apartment like a hurricane. Saw her mother sitting at the table with an untouched plate of borscht. Such stress. You need to check your health. Immediately. Why do I need doctors, darling? Dolores replied wearily. What new things can they tell me? That my heart is broken? Mom, are you serious? Alice snapped. At your age, stress can trigger anything, a heart attack, a stroke, a hypertensive crisis. The next day, Alice took her mother to the local clinic. Being the daughter of a local doctor, she managed to get Dolores seen by all the specialists she knew, skipping the queues. The therapist, Candy, a school friend of Alice, listened to Dolores's heart for a long time and shook her head. Arrhythmia, blood pressure spikes. It's nerves, of course, but at your age, it's dangerous. The cardiologist, David, a pre-retirement aged man with kind eyes, frowned as he examined the ECG. Tachycardia. Dolores, what happened to you? Your heart seems to have survived a blow. It did, Dolores thought gloomily. The neurologist checked reflexes and responses. The young female doctor, almost the same age as her granddaughter, asked sympathetically, "Have you had insomnia for long? Headaches? Is something going on in the family?" But when it came to the gynecologist, Dolores stubbornly refused. "Oh no, darling, why would I go there? I'm already 68. All women's business ended long ago." "Mom," Alice lowered her voice. "After such stress, you need to check everything. Hormonal balance, overall condition." Sabrina, a gynecologist with 30 years of experience, examined Dolores silently. Then she said, "You need to do some tests. Just in case." Dolores was too embarrassed to talk about her family situation. How do you explain to a stranger that your husband cheated for 50 years and you had no idea? She kept silent about the business trips and nighttime absences. The 10 days of waiting dragged on painfully. Alice called every day to check on her mother's condition. Marcus wandered around the house as if nothing had happened, demanding dinner, fresh shirts, complaining the soup was too salty and the potatoes undercooked. Dolores served him mechanically, like a robot. On Thursday, Alice came home from work darker than a thundercloud, sat opposite her mother, and spread the test results on the table. "Mom, you have HPV type 16. It's an oncogenic strain. And there are already precancerous changes." The words fell in the silent kitchen like stones into a well. Dolores didn't immediately understand what it meant. She looked at the papers with numbers and Latin letters, where someone's hand had written strange symbols. Her mind rang with emptiness. This is it, she thought slowly, as if through thick fog. This is the sentence. He didn't just kill my soul for half a century, he poisoned my body too. I didn't even know what that meant, darling. It means you have the human papillomavirus. Her daughter barely restrained her fury. Her voice trembled with indignation, not just as a daughter, but as a doctor witnessing criminal negligence. Mom, this virus is transmitted only sexually. The incubation period can last for years. Dad definitely had other partners, and he infected you. And then the years of women's problems came flooding back to Dolores, problems she kept as a shameful secret. Sharp pains in the lower abdomen, like knife stabs, that she endured gritting her teeth. In their generation, it was customary to endure and not complain. Bloody discharge she dismissed as menopause, it's just the age, what can you do? Nights waking up in heat, thinking, God, could this be cancer? But she didn't go to the doctor, afraid to hear the worst. Doctors gave general diagnoses, inflammation of the appendages, age-related changes. They prescribed some pills and sent her home. No special tests were done, and she believed it was supposed to be that way. That women must suffer in silence. So I was sick all those years. Mom. Alice grabbed her hands. Her voice held not only a daughter's pain but the professional rage of a doctor. He was slowly killing you. Do you understand, if we hadn't started treatment now, in a couple of years it would have been cancer. Cervical cancer. And he would have still said it was just your age. Tears of helplessness filled her daughter's eyes. She, a doctor, could not protect her own mother from such betrayal. Dolores sat, absorbing what she had heard. So not only did he poison her soul for 50 years, he was slowly destroying her body too. Divorce him immediately, her daughter demanded. He's a murderer, do you understand? A murderer. In the evening, Dolores showed Marcus the test results. He barely glanced at the papers and waved them off. Well, you probably caught it somewhere, who knows? Everyone gets sick with something at our age. Felix has prostate issues, Henry has diabetes. Marcus, Dolores's voice was quiet, but steel rang through it. The doctor said, it's because of you. Because of those women. Ah, he dragged the word out, as if it was nothing. Dolores, you know I'm a man in my prime. And you? Just look at yourself, old, fat. I needed to find some relief somewhere. He said it calmly, almost businesslike. I didn't leave you, I raised the kids, brought money home, provided a roof over your head. What I did on the side, that's a man's business. Dolores listened, and it was like she was seeing him for the first time. This man, with whom she had lived for half a century, spoke about her illness, about her possible death, as if discussing the weather. Something in Dolores's chest finally broke. She had lived 50 years with a stranger. With someone who didn't love her. Who used her as a free housekeeper and a cover for his affairs. Who infected her with an incurable disease, and now even blamed her for it. A month passed in turmoil, like a pendulum swinging between despair and hope. Dolores would sit by the window and cry, looking at the yellow leaves in the yard, then jump up and start fiercely washing floors, doing laundry, cooking, as if household chores could drown out the pain in her soul. She wandered through the house like a shadow. Every document for the divorce was hard to get: medical certificates, bank statements, work history papers. Alice helped her navigate the legal complexities, explaining what was what. Leona ran around the offices. Dolores was too scared to visit herself. Whispers began in the building. Neighbors exchanged glances when they met, whispered behind her back. Have you heard? The Millers are getting divorced? No way. They seemed like such a close couple. They say he cheated on her his whole life. But really? We never knew. Dolores heard these talks and understood. Now everyone would either pity her or judge her. Why divorce at such an age? She could have endured a bit longer. How does a 68-year-old woman live alone? For what? Where to go? Pension, $700, half of which went to medicine. And no skills besides housekeeping. All her life she had only been a wife and mother. Marcus behaved as before. He demanded dinner exactly at 6, fresh shirts by Monday, and socks neatly arranged in the dresser. As if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't destroyed her world with one confession. Dolores! Where's my blue shirt? He yelled from the bedroom. And the coffee's already cold. And she, like a machine, went to iron, cook, serve. 50 years of habit were stronger than the pain. Mom, you can't live like this. Alice came on Saturday and saw her mother, thin and with dull eyes. Move in with us. But how, dear? Dolores shook her head. You have a 2-bedroom apartment, 2 teenagers. Where would I fit there? On the sofa in the living room, we'll get a folding bed. Mom, we'll support you, but you have to decide yourself, stay a slave or start living. The words hit hard. But wasn't that the truth? Half a century of cooking, washing, cleaning for a man who thought she existed only for his convenience. That same evening, the phone rang. A long-distance number. Dolores, a familiar Moldovan accent, spoke on the line. It's Sabrina. Sabrina, your little sister. Dolores caught her breath. Her sister rarely called, only on major holidays. What's going on with you? Alice told me everything. Dolores, come home. The family house is empty, the vineyard is overgrown. We'll live together like in childhood. And in her memory, the white house with blue shutters in the village surfaced. The vineyard her grandfather had planted. The jasmine scent in the yard under the window. The well with icy water that made your teeth chatter even in the heat. After their parents died, the house had passed to her by will. But she had abandoned it. City life seemed more important, more right. Maybe it really is, Dolores thought. The decision ripened slowly, like grapes under the Moldovan sun. And it finally took shape after a chance meeting in a store. Dolores was choosing bread when she spotted a familiar figure near the dairy section. Melissa. The neighbor from apartment 12. Her husband's mistress. 15 years, his mistress. Melissa noticed her, turned red like a lobster, grabbed the first kefir she could reach, and rushed for the exit. But Dolores stopped her. Melissa, wait. Her voice was calm. Even gentle. Melissa froze. Like a hunted animal. How long have you been with my husband? Dolores asked, looking straight into her eyes. Dolores. I'm sorry, Melissa seemed ready to sink through the floor. 15 years. Yes. I had no idea, Dolores said just as surprisingly calmly. Did he tell you anything about me? And Melissa, maybe from shame, maybe from relief that the secret was out, started to cry. He said you don't understand him. That you have no intimacy. That you're like a sister to him. That the marriage was one of convenience. Each word hit like a blow. So he lied to his mistresses too, painting her as cold and unloving. And she had thought they lived in love and harmony. Thank you, Dolores said. She turned and headed to the checkout. Melissa stayed standing there, crying in the middle of the store. At home, Dolores went to the kitchen where Marcus was having dinner and said, I'm divorcing you. I'm selling my share of the apartment and leaving. At first, he didn't believe her. He laughed. Come on, Dolores. Where will you go? But when he realized she wasn't joking, he got scared. Dolores, what are you doing? Who's going to cook for you? Wash your clothes? Who will take care of you when you're old? As if she had no other role besides cooking and washing. Leon's son-in-law found a good lawyer, Naomi. A woman of about 50, with smart, attentive eyes. She listened to the story, nodded, and said, In a divorce, you are entitled to half of the apartment. Plus, you can claim compensation for 50 years of housekeeping. This is called jointly acquired property. In monetary terms, it will be a decent amount. When Marcus realized he was losing not only a free servant but also housing, he panicked completely. He started calling relatives, complaining to friends. Can you imagine? At 70, she wants a divorce. She's lost her mind. I've provided for her all her life. Marcus even tried to turn Alice against Dolores. Daughter, please talk to your mother, he pleaded. Where would she go at her age? Who would want her? She'll be left penniless. But Alice replied briefly. Dad, you're to blame. You destroyed everything yourself. Dolores was tormented by doubts. She lay awake at night thinking, what if he's right? What if I'm making a mistake? Where will I go, old as I am? But then she remembered his words on her birthday, for convenience, and the doubts passed. Dolores, think with your head, he said then. Where will you go at your age? Who needs you? Stay, I won't do it again. He paused, then added with a smirk. Well, okay, maybe just sometimes. But you won't find out. You never did in 50 years. And then Dolores understood this man was hopeless. He didn't see infidelity as a sin. He thought she was a fool he could keep deceiving. No, Marcus, she said firmly. It's over. Her voice carried such resolve that Marcus understood there was no persuading her. For 50 years, he had known the submissive, patient Dolores, and now another woman stood before him, one who was leaving his life forever. 2 months of paperwork flew by like a single day. The divorce was processed quickly. Marcus didn't resist, he understood it was useless. Selling his share of the apartment brought Dolores 5 million rubles. Plus compensation for half a century of housekeeping, another 200,000. For a village, that was a fortune. Packing took only one evening. Dolores packed into 2 worn suitcases the most precious things to her heart, photographs of her children and grandchildren in wooden frames, her mother's Moldovan jewelry, silver earrings with red stones and a genuine amber Manista necklace, and an icon of St. Paraskiva, blessed by her grandmother long ago. She left the furniture, dishes, carpets, everything, to her husband. Let him deal with his own household. Dolores, Marcus stood in the bedroom doorway, watching her pack. You're not putting on a brave face anymore, even your voice is quieter. Well, I joked back then. It's a man's nature, what can you do? But I love you in my own way. Dolores didn't lift her head, carefully wrapping the icon in a silk scarf. It's too late, Marcus. You've been deceiving me for 50 years. Enough. At the station, the whole family saw her off. Alice cried, hugging her mother goodbye. Mom, you're amazing. Start a new life. We'll come visit during the holidays, I promise. Grandma Dolores. Viola hung onto her neck. We'll call every day. Granny, Alex hugged her awkwardly. Hang in there. If Grandpa calls, don't listen to him. The train left at 10 p.m. Dolores settled on the lower berth in the economy carriage, rested her head on a clean pillow, and for the first time in months felt peace. Outside the window, the lights of towns, stations, and small forests flashed by. 50 years given to a stranger, she thought, staring into the darkness. How much time do I have left? I'll live for myself now. A transfer to a local bus. Her sister Sabrina met her at the bus station, older, worn out, but with the same kind eyes. They both cried openly, not caring about passers-by. Dolores, you've gotten so thin, Sabrina said, helping her sister into the neighbor Uncle Rick's old Ford. It's okay, I'll fatten up at home. They drove along a country road between vineyards. October. Harvest time. Golden leaves, heavy grape clusters on the vines. The air smelled of damp leaves and ripe grapes. A white house with blue shutters greeted her after the long emptiness. An overgrown yard, a vineyard that was once Grandpa's pride, now wild and untended. Sorry, Dolores, Sabrina said apologetically, spreading her hands. I only came in summer, couldn't keep up with the care. It's all right, Dolores walked through the house, touching the familiar walls. This is our home. We'll put it in order. An old wooden bed in the bedroom, an iron stove in the kitchen, a mirror in a carved frame. Everything was in its place, just like half a century ago. Only dusty and cold from long emptiness. The first night, Dolores lay in the childhood bed, listening to the noise of grape leaves outside the window. Silence. Peace. And no one demanding dinner, clean shirts, or coffee for breakfast. For the first time in months, Dolores fell asleep calmly, without sleeping pills. In the morning, she was awakened by roosters, a sound she hadn't heard in 50 years. Sitting on the bed, confused, she didn't immediately realize where she was. Then she remembered and smiled, truly for the first time in a month. Home? She was home. The first weeks were hard. Her hands, used to the city hustle, didn't know where to start. Lighting the stove was a whole science. Carrying water from the well made her back ache. Sabrina patiently taught her. Dolores, don't rush. Remember what Mom used to say. A black heart won't enter a White House. First clean your soul, and your hands will remember everything. And indeed, little by little, childhood skills came back. How to bake bread in the stove, how to weed the garden, how to speak Moldovan with the neighbors. The language of childhood proved stronger than city habits. After a month, the first letter arrived from Alice. Mom, you wouldn't believe how things have changed. My voice is different now, somehow alive. And Dad has completely fallen apart. He looks disheveled, buys ready-made food at the store. He asks about you every day. Dolores read the letter twice and thought, I wonder what exactly he asks. How I'm living without him. Is it bad? By October, on the anniversary of that terrible birthday, a doctor from the district hospital arrived. Sabrina had arranged a follow-up examination. The young doctor examined Dolores and shook his head. Remarkable. Your tests are almost normal. Your blood pressure has stabilized. The arrhythmia is gone, and most importantly, your tumor markers have dropped threefold. Is it the country air? She asked. Not the air, the doctor smiled. Peace in the soul. In November, a wedding was held in the neighboring village. Sabrina persuaded her sister to go. Dolores, why are you locked away? Good people are gathering, let's have some fun. Dolores put on her national costume, a white shirt embroidered with red threads, a dark skirt, an apron with patterns, silver earrings with red stones. In the mirror, an unfamiliar woman looked back, tanned, refreshed, with clear eyes. At the wedding, they played old Moldovan songs, the Korova choir she remembered from childhood. The villagers pulled her into the circle, and she danced like she hadn't danced in 30 years. She spun to the sounds of the flute and cymbals. It seemed she was 18 again, still unaware of what awaited her. Laughed old Aunt Sabrina. Not a sister, but a neighbor. You've completely changed. Like a flower after the rain. In winter, letters began arriving from her grandchildren. Viola wrote, Grandma, Mom showed Aunt Sabrina your photos from Instagram. You look so cool. Alex and I are saving money to come in summer. I want to learn to weave wreaths from grape leaves, like in the picture. Alex was more reserved. Grandma Dolores, Grandpa has really fallen apart. He doesn't shave, wears socks with holes. Mom says he asks about you all the time. But don't come back. You're free now, and we'll come in summer. I'll help you in the vineyard. The letters warmed her soul more than the stove. By spring, Dolores had tended almost the entire vineyard. She pruned the old vines, tied the young ones to stakes, dug the soil. Her hands became rough and blistered. But these were honest blisters, from her own labor for her own good. In May, when the apricot trees bloomed, her old childhood friend Kimmy from the neighboring village arrived. She came on an old motorcycle, just like in their youth. Dolores. They hugged and cried. I heard you returned, but I kept wondering if I should come and was too shy. They sat on the veranda until midnight, drinking homemade wine from last year's harvest. Sabrina made it. They recalled their girlish dreams. Remember, laughed Kimmy. At 15, we swore we'd only marry princes. And you said, a city man, to take me far away from here. He took you away, Dolores smiled sadly. For 50 years he took me away, and now you've come back. So it was meant to be. God knows best. 6 months later, only the name remained of the former Dolores. Tanned, thinner, she cared for the restored vineyard. Her health improved surprisingly fast. The treatment helped, the stress passed, the tests became good. Dolores bought a bicycle, rode to neighboring villages, helped villagers with chores, knitted socks and sweaters for her grandchildren. The house transformed, repaired, whitewashed, with new furniture brought from the city. Everything was clean, cozy, truly homey. A call from Marcus caught her in August, when she was harvesting her first own crop. The grape clusters were full of juice, heavy, sweet, the kind she hadn't seen since childhood. Dolores, his voice was plaintive, broken. How are you? How's your health? Fine, she replied briefly, cutting another cluster with pruning shears. The basket was already full of grapes. There would be some to sell and some to keep for wine. Listen, maybe you'll come back? He spoke hurriedly, as if afraid she'd hang up. There's no one to cook, clean. Melissa, your friend, doesn't come anymore. And Nancy from the store got married. It's hard to find new women at 71. Dolores, I realized my mistake. What exactly did you realize, Marcus? She asked, sitting down on a wooden bench under the old pear tree. Well, that it's bad without you. That you were a good wife. A wife for convenience, Dolores reminded him. No, not for convenience. I loved you. In my own way. Dolores looked at the vineyard, the white house with blue shutters, the endless Moldovan fields where corn ripened. She breathed in the air scented with ripe fruits and fragrant herbs. My dear, she said calmly, enunciating every word clearly, it's too late to drink Borjomi when your kidneys have failed. She hung up the phone and walked toward the house. The sun was setting in the west, painting the sky in golden and crimson hues. The vineyard rustled in the gentle breeze, promising many more years of abundant harvests. At home, letters from her grandchildren awaited her, and a hot dinner, cooked by her own hands. For herself. For the first time in 70 years of life.